Good morning, Tartu. How do you let go of your past and leap into transforming your business? And is there an equivalent of a Cinderella syndrome for startups? And what do you do when a potential strategic investor decides to turn on you and comes in as your competitor? We'll find out. Good morning. My name is Sternfeld. Happy to be here. I've been building companies, teams, products for the past 18 years. And for almost 8 years, I lived and worked in Silicon Valley. And 6 months ago, almost to the day, I came back home in Estonia. And now I'm a managing partner at Nordic Ninja, which is a new Japanese investment fund here in the Nordics and the Baltics, investing in mission-driven founders, I would say, that really want to make an impact in the world. And I focus predominantly on AI-driven solutions and marketplaces in areas such as mobility, climate tech, insurance, energy, robotics, and so a few others. And I also advise Super Angel in their seed investments here. In my 11-year journey, what we kind of know as Planet OS, really, there were 4 stages. And from building a data buoy in Estonia to working with global power companies around the world in data rights management. And you can't plan for this stuff. So I was invited here to give kind of an overview or share my experience in how we transform from nothing to something. Before I go in there, just for context, here are some of my normal jobs before I went to Silicon Valley. I'm trained as a product developer and a robotics engineer. My first engineering job was in Tallinn University of Technology, designing unmanned vehicles and robotic arms for in rough urban environments. And in parallel, we started a family company manufacturing parts for wind turbines and other industrial systems. And a few years of that, and I got an invitation from ABB to come and lead their special projects across the Baltics. And that had a pretty wide range, so 1,300 people in the company across the Baltics, from designing workflow software for a switchgear factory, which would entail anything from order intake, manufacturing, and shipping, to implementing SAP in 10 months, to building an innovation campus in Jüri, to putting together the team to win the electric car charging network tender in Estonia, which was the first in the world to be established, at least for fast charging, and a bunch of change management projects. And the craziest projects of them all was probably designing or co-designing the Statue of Liberty of Estonia. As cool as all these things may have sounded, I still had that urge that I wanted to become independent. And so I said yes to a couple of side projects. One of them was being on the board of GrabCat for the first year. That was a very valuable experience. We learned a lot. Then I said yes to teaching high school kids at Tallinn University of Technology during their breaks and weekends how to solve problems, how to develop products, how to be creative, and also developed a program for Realgoal, which was 10 years ago. And then we still wanted to do something with our own hands, and so we created, with our friends, we created a product studio called FlyDog, where we designed and built prototypes of different industrial systems for industrial customers. And as it sometimes happens, or more often than not, these side projects may become the main story. And so in 2008, we won a tender to design a data buoy that would profile the water column and understand how the phytoplankton moves. Because guess what? The Baltic Sea is full of dissolved metals. And so one thing led to another. We deployed a couple of them in the Gulf of Finland, and we kind of saw that there's a bigger demand. So we toured Europe and tried to understand what are their customers' needs and what would they like to see more of in that buoy, in that data buoy, which was kind of novel at the time. And what we learned is actually their problem was not so much in hardware, but in software, and more specifically, data interoperability. It's a boring word. I'm not going to bore you more with that. But basically what it means is to be able to seamlessly work with different types of data coming from sensors from all over the world. And so we had a decision to make, whether this company is going to go and venture into data services or continue to build buoys. my friend Kalle and I, we wanted to venture into data services, and so we spun off and started Marine Explore. I have to, the side story here is that at this time, my wife was 5 months pregnant, and our older daughter was 2 years old. And I still can't believe that she was the one that encouraged me to go to Silicon Valley for 2.5 months. It's a kind of a risky bet. And so we went on to create this company and to create a cloud platform that would enable seamlessly working with ocean data. And during my first week in San Francisco, I attended a fireside chat to hear what a very famous VC and entrepreneur, Vinod Khosla, had to say. And he said one thing that really has stuck with me ever since, which is that you never quite know why you succeeded, but you almost always know why you failed. Now, we're building Marine Explorer, and we're building a new team, completely new team. We try to find the best people we possibly can in Estonia, a country with a very large ocean, as you know. So we built a really cool team, and one of our co-founders became Andrei Karpyshenko, who will be speaking here tomorrow, I think. He's now the head of AI at Bolt, Go Bolt. And we wanted our product development cycle to be super short, in other terms, very fast. And our end users were all working in big corporations, so that didn't really work out. And we took a page out of GrabCat's playbook, let's say this way, and built a community around all these tools. So we really, almost instantly, were on the world map after we launched. And we made it easy to find, access, and use ocean data coming from sensors. And the community that had really never been connected before really appreciated that, and we were really happy. Now, this approach also attracted quite a lot of non-ocean companies, and we realized the market is really bigger than that. There's nothing different about other types of data coming from sensors, at least not in geospatial or spatiotemporal terms. And you know, we really wanted to make this work, and so we had to think about how are we going to tackle this. And so this sounds very cool, but at the same time, we were an underfunded company and really hadn't figured out monetization. So we thought, why don't we take a try and talk to some of these companies? Unfortunately, these guys really didn't want to buy our stuff. They just wanted to buy us, and these offers were really no good. And for the company that wanted to invest, well, they turned on us, as I said. So we started to call this the Cinderella syndrome for startups, which is in which step-parents treat their step-kids badly. So now, these 4 companies that we spoke to, they all came from different domains. And that really gave us a really good insight into that they really needed that data platform. There needs to be something more to this. And in a situation like this, you have to really ask yourself, where are you in this whole value chain? What's happening is this big digital wave coming. And so where are you in this chain? What is your unique position? Why do you deserve a place in the sun in this world? And so we did a pretty deep exercise across the value chain, which you can see on the screen, from left to right, from raw data to services, and decided to rename the company and refocus the company. The new name of the company became Planet OS, and our focus was really what we knew what to do best: indexing spatiotemporal data, building virtual databases and APIs. How to turn that into a product, we will talk about that in a second. But before I do that, a couple of words what we learned about the rebranding. So rebranding is hard. Everybody kind of knows that. Once you've done that, you can't really go back. So you want to make sure you get it right. And if you're also changing focus when you're rebranding, make sure your team is on board, make sure your shareholders are on board. And of course, maybe the first thing you have to do is really think about the market, think about your customers, talk to your customers, figure it out. There are a lot of methods out there depending on which domain you're really working in. So we were kind of well on our way, and we started to find that scalable use case. We got pilots in offshore oil and gas because a lot of the oil spills, and we dealt with environmental data, shipping companies, offshore wind. But then on the side, we also had, we were involved in the NOAA Big Data Project. Among other big companies, we were that geeky little kid that was able to do a lot of stuff. We built a climate data access tool for NASA, and we still continue to serve the open data community. That was all really cool and interesting, but totally unsustainable and burned everybody's energy. So we had to find that one single hit that would grow. Here's a photo on the left. You see there, it's one of the largest offshore wind farms in the world in Liverpool Bay, Wales, operated by Energy, which now is Energy RWE Eon. It's the largest vertically integrated power company in the world, maybe except for the Chinese. And they had just built this for £2 billion, and they had, the operators of this wind farm had a room full of screens, and really was a really inefficient way to operate this. And so what they needed is to bring all this information together and present it in real time in an understandable way so that anybody anywhere on the phone, on the iPad, could look at this. And so we developed this app called Powerboard on top of the platform, and it became a success. About 18 months of iterations and developing different views and onboarding different wind farms, we had about 150 wind farms on the platform in 6 countries. And finally, we were off to the races. We had revenue, we were almost cash flow positive, but we really needed more than just one customer, right? I mean, that's a big risk. So what do you do? So we started looking around, and a couple of deals that didn't really work out for us. And so we had to go back to our investors and said we had already this liability with other wind farms, and we really couldn't get any more funding because we had only one customer, even though we had a bunch of wind farms. And so after a few different debates and discussions, we got a bunch of offers, and one of the offers was from our own investor, Interest. And since that offer would allow us to continue working on what we had started on, we took it. And Interest is a global company that is the inventor of digital rights management, and so the PlanOS team became a part of the data platforms team, and I became its general manager and VP. And over the course of 2 years that we worked, we created a joint platform called Modulus. We traveled the world, worked with different power companies around the world, where their problem really is that the margins for electrons is decreasing while the value of data is increasing, and there's a lot of problems at stake. So from who owns the data to how do you monetize, what are the services of the future, and what is a utility anyway. And after about 2 years of that, I saw that what we had really started out from 2008 with starting a buoy had become something that big. So I felt that my role was over, and I came back home. So what do you make of all this? I'd say that when you dare to reinvent yourself, you kind of discover another piece of the puzzle that is really who you are. And each time you make that transformation, you change the way you work, you change the value proposition, you change your product, and you change your team. So you want to make sure you're doing the right things, because then the other lesser mistakes are worth fixing. And finally, I'd say that, remember that Vinod Khosla quote I slipped in sort of secretly about success and failure? So now I very much understood it, because I felt like I made a million mistakes, and I really understood where I had made them, especially in hindsight. And so now I'm helping founders around the world to avoid these pitfalls and grow their companies. And what I want to leave you guys today is this. Focus on perfecting your craft. You will make a lot of mistakes on your journey, but your business and your product is only as good as the craft. And the craft is something that nobody can take away from you. I hope you enjoyed my talk. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rainer. A short talk. You like to keep the host on his toes, don't you? I like this guy.
I was told to be on time.
Very good. I want to go back to that last point that you said about, know your craft. Because you kind of just threw, hey guys, know your craft. Like, that is the most powerful thing that you said today. Let's dig into that. Yeah. This idea that the skills that you're building now, like no matter what, the whole thing fails, it goes away, you'll never have those experiences taken away from you.
Yeah. So what I really meant is perfecting the craft, not so much knowing the craft. It's a continuous process.
Okay, you mean your skill area or your skill
Yeah,
field?
you just focus. A lot of people, what they would do is they focus on a particular product or a particular business, and they wanna just get that right no matter what. And sometimes their own craft suffers as a result, and people can tell, right? Of course, I'm not saying that done is better than perfect, obviously, especially in startup world. But the idea is that you focus on perfecting your craft, your skills, how you deliver, because the product is the process of craft. And so if you focus on the craft, and I've seen that so and so many times, and my favorite piece, and where I actually got this idea of that kind of tagline, and I've been using it ever since, 3-4 years ago or so. I read an interview with Joni Ive, at the time was head of design at Apple. He just recently left. And they were talking about how to design and all these different things and how do they meet and so forth. And so he went on and on about this kind of process. And then I kind of realized that, wow, it's really like these products that we all love, the Apple products, at least the ones who love Apple. But these products are really a result of that process, this meticulous process. They don't come out and say, this needs to look like this, or this needs to work like this. They explore everything. They really focus on the craft. And you focus on the craft, and the product will take care of itself. The business will take care of itself.
Interesting idea. I guess if I think about my own work and my own life, that makes a lot more sense in the artistic field. So I work with comedians.
Yeah.
And in that regard, focusing on the craft is a bit more obvious maybe for a comedian. Focus on what you do. Focus on your jokes. Focus on being a better artist first before we worry about putting out our 1-hour special, before we're trying to monetize our videos on YouTube, before we're trying to make some thing jumping up and down on the TV. Just be good at the base thing that you do, and that might take a while. That might take a number of years, but it doesn't matter because every year you're getting better.
Yeah.
What then would be, okay, so I mean, I feel like that's a simple example to understand about an artist. Right. Be a better painter before you try to be a better graphic designer before you try to sell your graphic designs to the world, maybe, But in the scope of your business world, what did that mean for you as a business person?
Yeah. As I mentioned, we made a lot of mistakes, right? And those mistakes were not like, oh, we created an ugly product, or it wasn't like usable, or things like that. Well, what we really missed, and in different spaces, but what people and startups miss in general is that they jump to conclusions too fast. They make something happen and it's not really needed. Or how do you even decide on something? Or they want to go from point A to point B in a straight line where it's a dead end in between. You have a cul-de-sac and you can see the point B, but you can't really get there. And so you really have to figure out the process, how you get from point A to point B. And very often, especially Estonians, we want to go from point A to point B. That's it, no messing around. But life is not like that. So if you focus on the craft of that business process, for instance, you'll be successful. And the whole information is out there. It's just people have to be more open to kind of saying that, listen, I really don't know what I'm doing, but I have this question, I have this hypothesis, I want to prove it. What do I have to do to prove it? What is the next step? Can I really afford to jump that high right now? Maybe I do a stepping stone first. There's a whole slew of material out there, depending on the business you're in, how to perfect that craft. Same goes for engineers, same goes for designers. I love your example about comedians. I think that applies everywhere in the world, or every professional domain.
Right, but I think it is the most interesting when it comes to business, because even if you go, okay, an engineer, get your training, be a good engineer, sure, and I'm a better engineer than I was, I'm better at designing, better at constructing, better at programming, whatever that might be. But when your goal is to run the company, when your goal is business, we don't often think of that as a craft. It's sort of like in a business school, out of business school, or why the hell are you even going to business school? This is Estonia, go make the startup. It's obvious, what's the problem? Those skills need nurture, and I think it's very good for you to focus on.
And I think what happens is that, maybe that's really important to understand, very often in the early days of our careers, we may have a flavor, we have a taste of what good sounds like or feels like, but we don't know how to get there. And we try to emulate, like children do, like, oh, the parents do it like this, I do like that. And we try to emulate them, we fall flat on our face, mainly because we don't have that craft. And that's why I said, if you focus on the craft, just focus on the craft, and everything will take care of itself. Don't just go through the walls because you're going to die. And that's not to say don't make mistakes. That's a whole different thing. The whole idea is like, how do you focus on the craft? Because that's a long time investment.
I like that. And I like that idea particularly, and we'll have to wrap up here, but I like it because here in Estonia, you have access to those people, those mentors. Like, oh, how am I going to learn about this business craft? Me and my buddies have got to knock around and bump each other heads together trying to learn how to be better businessmen. We have such access to amazingly experienced founders and people that have made these companies. We are not that far removed. If you want to talk to those people in Estonia, it's not that hard. God, you can go talk to the Prime Minister if you want. He'll talk to anybody. Like, you can talk to everyone. So I think use the advantages of Estonia.
Yeah.
Final thoughts? Sorry, I threw that one on you there, didn't
No, listen, I'm happy to be back in Estonia. Is that what my final thought? I'm happy to talk to any of you guys if you're interested, if any of this even kind of clicks with you. Maybe you just think I'm a douchebag, so that's fine too. So,
Not at all,
happy.
sir. That's the
All
last
right.
conclusion we'll
All
make.
right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Reinventing.
All right.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
sir.